Welcome back to another edition to Comic Flashback. I'm Marl Across 316, and we are looking at X-Men issue number 3. This issue came out in January of 1964, and today we are looking at the first appearance of the Blob. And so, who is the Blob, and what is his power? We're going to find all this out in today's issue as the X-Men tackle the Blob. And if you are a fan of the X-Men or have any knowledge about the X-Men, you know that the Blob is a pretty dangerous mutant. And so we'll be looking more at the Blob today as he makes his first appearance. As always, this is brought to you by Stan Lee, who wrote this issue. We have Jack Kirby on the illustrations. Inking is by Paul Raymond, and the lettering page is by Art Simek. And so today's title is Beware of the Blob. Beware of the Blob. That's what we're going to be focusing on today. And so we start out the issue here with a bang here. We have the X-Men. They're in their training room, the danger room. And we see that Cyclops is using his optic blast beams to practice on the sawdust-filled practice bags. And he's doing pretty well, as we see. And then we see that although he's doing so well in this training, he's not in the best mood. He's not in the chipper mood like the rest of his teammates. And Professor Xavier is distressed about it. And we learn that Cyclops is upset because as long as he has this dangerous power, he feels that he's just not worth anything. And we see that Marvel Girl comes to his aid saying, Scott Summers, I don't ever want to hear you say that again. So we see that right off the bat that maybe Marvel Girl is showing some sympathies for Cyclops and maybe some future feelings down the road. We'll see. We see that then the Angel and Iceman start to banter here and they start messing with each other, and we see the Iceman then tries to freeze Angel's wings here, and we have Cyclops. He gets involved, and they're all just bantering. Then we see that Professor Xavier says, return to your training stations, and we see that Marvel Girl is now up to the plate, and she's going to use her telekinetic powers to move this block of wood and have it go through these iron gratings here, and she's pretty successful at it when all of a sudden we see that Professor Xavier then alerts the X-Men that he feels that there is another mutant present in New York City. And so who could this be? So we're going to find who this person is as we see Professor Xavier then tells all of his students to get into their civilian identities and hunt down this mutant. So that's exactly what they're going to be doing. We see then that the X-Men are going to be trying to fight as to who's going to be taken out. Marvel Girl here, who is Jean Grey, kind of escort her out and stuff like that. We see that Beast is up to the challenge. We see that Iceman's going to be up to the challenge. Angel's going to be up to the challenge. Cyclops, though, is not really up to the challenge, as we see. He's still in a bad mood. He's kind of like the downer of the group. And we see here that they all have gotten ready. We see that Iceman's going to see if he can take and escort Jean Grey. But it looks like Jean Grey, once again, as I said, she's showing some interest towards Cyclops here, Scott Summers, and saying that she picks Scott Summers. But then we see that Angel swoops on in, grabs a hold of Jean Grey, and gets right into his car without even seeing if Jean Grey wants him to escort her. And so we see that all three members of the X-Men here they're just pretty mad at Angel here, as he took advantage of his wealth here and all of his glamour to get Jean Grey to go out with him and go, hunt down the Blob, is who they're going to basically be searching for. And so we see that all of the X-Men, they're going to be searching throughout the city. They're on like a manhunt here. They all suspect that one of these guys have to be a mutant here, but they all see that they are mistaken here. But finally we see that Scott Summers is going to be the one to find out who is the mutant as he goes into this carnival. And we see right from the get-go, this is where we're going to meet the Blob. The Blob works for this carnival. And this is going to be the mutant that Professor Xavier has been searching for. And we see right off the bat some of his powers. These men cannot move the Blob no matter how much strength they put into it. They can't move him by an inch. And then we see that this cowboy then unloads a few rounds of his gun, and they all think it's just a bunch of blanks, but actually it is real shells, and his body absorbs the shells, and then they pop right back out of his chest. So the Blob can absorb any blow, anything that comes. So that's pretty cool, as I have to say myself. So then we see that Scott Summers, after that big show, is going to go to Blob and ask him to kind of forcefully go with the X-Men. And so that's what he's going to be doing first. He doesn't get anywhere with the Blob, as we see that the Blob has a pretty bad mood, and he doesn't really trust anybody. Then we see that Angel and Jean Grey are going to then try to convince the Blob to join. And the Blob actually is like, well, if I can sit right next to this beauty right here, talking to Jean Grey, referencing Jean Grey, then he'll more than happily go to the X Mansion. And so we see that Scott Summers loses his patience. He then uses his optic blast on the Blob here, and the Blob says, I could get angry and I could fight you all, but looks like I'll go ahead with it and just join y'all. So then we see that the X-Men then take the Blob back to their secret hideout. So now he knows the identities of the X-Men, and he shows a little bit more of his strength and powers here, and nothing can stop the Blob here, as we soon find out here. Even this ice cube here that's frozen on the Blob's foot, even by just moving his little toe, he can break that block of ice. So again, the Blob has this supernatural power here where he can absorb any kind of blow or any kind of power that he wishes. So we then see that Professor Xavier then extends a invitation to join the X-Men, but the Blob is not going to have it. And he says, I'm not going to join the ranks of you guys because I have better powers than any of y'all, and I could take any of you guys down. So then Professor Xavier starts to panic here. He's like, X-Men, we got to stop this guy because now he knows our secret identities. So all the X-Men are going to try their best to stop the Blob, and the Blob almost hits Professor Xavier, but Marvel Girl gets Professor Xavier out of the way here. And so we soon then see that the Blob then is going to get away, and this is where he's going to try to recruit, and he recruits successfully the rest of the carnival. And so now we see that Professor Xavier's fears are now revealed here. His big fear is that their identities are going to be revealed here, and the X-Men are basically going to be hunted down like criminals if the Blob is successful in taking them down. And so that's exactly what the Blob is going to try to do here. He goes to his boss. He says, I run this show now. And so he recruits all of these people that work at the carnival, and we see that Professor Xavier sends the Angel to go and scout around and see if the Blob is in fact recruiting people. He then returns to the X-Mansion saying, yes, the Blob is recruiting people. So this is where Professor Xavier is going to be working on this electronic mass influencer. And if he can get the Blob in range and the rest of these people in range, he can help make them lose their memory of the X-Men's identity. And so that's what Professor Xavier, his big plan is to get Blob in range so that the Blob can lose his memory of the identity of the X-Men. So he tells Angel to go tell the other X-Men to suit up. And so that's exactly what we're going to see. And then we see a full-blown invasion here as the Blob and the rest of these people that work at the circus are going to try their best to defeat the X-Men here. And so it's a full-blown invasion, and this is some of the best artwork I've seen so far in the series with Jack Kirby. Once again, great action scenes drawn by Jack Kirby. and inked by Paul Raymond here. Just awesome stuff. And you can't tell me that doesn't look like Chewbacca. But some, again, awesome action scenes by Jack Kirby. This is really well drawn. Also, it's the story is pretty good, I have to say. It entertained me throughout the whole issue was very entertaining when I read this issue, I have to say. And so we see here that as good as the X-Men are and they use all their abilities, they are not able to, stop the full force of this invasion. And so all the X-Men are being taken down one at a time while Professor Xavier is still working on his intensifier here. And he still needs a little bit more time, as we see here. And all the X-Men are being taken hostage. None of them are going to be able to stop the Blob. The Blob is still pretty arrogant here, as we see, and he's still going to be successful, as we see that Cyclops is then soon taken down, who is probably one of the best leaders of the X-Men. And so we see here that, once again, all the X-Men are being taken down one at a time, and the Blob is then successful in defeating the X-Men. So now Professor Xavier is left helpless. Will Professor Xavier be able to stop the Blob and this circus of crime here? So now the Blob then goes into the X Mansion, and he is just feet away from Professor Xavier. Then we see that Professor Xavier is going to use his mental powers to alert Marvel Girl here. He tells Marvel Girl to take off the blindfold, and she does. Then through her vision, he sees that there is these sharp knives in this wagon here that she can use to her advantage. She uses the knife to cut off the ropes of all the X-Men. So now the X-Men are going to do a sneak attack on the Blob. We see that Iceman uses this ice wall to stop the Blob from attacking Professor Xavier. And we see that once again the X-Men are going to battle the Blob, and this time in this issue it's going to be for the last time, the final confrontation. As we get into this action-packed story, we see that then within range, Professor Xavier finally finished the intensifier, and he uses his powers to basically help the Blob lose his memory of the X-Men. And so then we see that the Blob and the rest of the carnival freaks go back to the carnival. And so now the Blob is back to his normal business of performing at the circus, and he has no memory of the X-Men. But that doesn't mean that the Blob can't have his memory returned to him. So that's something we're going to have to fear in the future. But I hope you like this first appearance of the Blob and this issue as well. I love looking at these old issues of the Marvel Silver Age. And so next time we're going to be looking at issue number 4 as the X-Men continue to battle these awesome mutant villains. And so I hope that you returned to look at issue number 4. And until next time, keep reading comics.